Hi, this is Chris from abarabove.com, and today we're going to learn how to clarify lime juice, so stay tuned. So the first time I heard about juice clarification was actually at Tales of the Cocktail. I was taking a class on hydrocolloids, and the presenter actually mentioned it. Didn't really go into too much detail, but just as a pure coincidence, the class I had afterwards was on bottle carbonated cocktails. The presenter there actually went into some pretty specific detail about the process of clarifying juices and the importance of it on bottle carbonated cocktails. And the reason that he gave was that when you're carbonating any kind of cocktail or anything in general, you want the liquid to be as pure as possible. So, for example, if you have pulp in there, it's going to foam up on you because what happens is that pulp actually captures air and puts it into the drink and has these little tiny microscopic bubbles all around it. When you carbonate it, you're introducing even more bubbles into the system there. And the thing that kind of blew my mind when he said it was that bubbles can only form around other bubbles. And he actually called them nucleation sites. So if you have a nucleation site of, lime pulp in there, it's going to create bubbles. So it was really, really fascinating to hear that. Now, for any of you that have worked with Duvel, the beer, and they've given you the Duvel glasses, one of the coolest things about that glass, and you probably won't even notice it until you really know what to look for, is right in the dead center of the glass at the very bottom, they've actually etched a D to create a imperfection in the glass for which the bubbles to start to form in. Now, if you leave the beer there long enough, the plume of bubbles that come up through the beer will actually form a D in the top of the beer. It's kind of cool, and you really have to look for it, but it's definitely there, so it's something fascinating to keep in mind. So how it affects us with cocktails, we're going to go into, and we're going to go through the process with you, and we're going to learn some of the benefits and some of the limitations of clarifying lime juice for designing cocktails. So I'm really excited to provide some of this information for you and learn myself. It's going to be a fun process. So what we're going to do now is just get everything ready and juice some limes. So now that we've juiced all of our limes, we're going to go about using a different method of measurement than we're used to using behind a bar. Typically, when we're creating cocktails or making drinks, we use fluid ounces. So 1 ounce of lime juice, half an ounce lime juice, 3/4 ounce lime juice, whatever the measurement is. Now that we're using gelatin or agar-agar to make a clarified lime juice, we actually need to go by weight because agar-agar depends on weight, not by actual volume. So how we're going to do this is I have a gram scale here, so you'll need to have a gram scale. I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to add my measuring device, whatever is going to hold my lime juice. It's going to weigh that, and now I'm going to zero it out. So as of now, my scale says 0. So it's only measuring the volume or the weight of the lime juice. I'm going to find thoroughness to remove as much pulp before I add it to the agar as possible. And we'll get a final reading on the lime juice and proceed from there. So now that we've pressed and weighed out our lime juice, the next step is going to be to essentially bloom the agar-agar like we would gelatin. And how we would do that is to heat up the liquid and add 0.2% by weight of agar-agar and let it dissolve into and hydrate into the mix. You don't want to do that with lime juice since it's so temperature sensitive. So what we're going to do is actually use water to bloom the agar-agar. So what I'm going to do now is measure out half the volume that we had of lime juice. So we had 275 grams of lime juice. I'm going to weigh out 137.5 grams of water, and that's what I'm going to use to hydrate my agar-agar. So now we're going to hydrate the agar-agar, and we're going to do that by adding our water to a saucepan and adding our agar-agar straight to the cold liquid. And now we're going to add a flame to it and just let it start to hydrate while whisking. So now that we have the agar bloomed, we're just going to slowly start to incorporate the lime juice to it. In a slow, steady stream and whisking the entire time. And the important thing is that you don't want this to fall below 35 degrees Celsius, or the bloom or the gelatin will start to set. The agar will start to set prematurely, and you won't get the finished product that you need. Great, so now we're just going to chill down our lime agar solution. What we have in a bowl is just some ice and water. Prepared an ice bath for it, and essentially we're just going to set it. So I'm going to continue to stir this until it starts to have the consistency of cottage cheese. As you can see, the agar and lime juice have set to a nice consistency. So now we're just going to separate the juice from the agar curds. And how we're going to do that is just get a piece of linen or cheesecloth. I've actually pre-wet this so that the water or the lime juice doesn't have to hydrate the napkin, and so we'll get a better yield out of the product. So essentially that's all I've done. So let's go ahead and see how this process has worked out. And now for the fun part. And David Arnold from Cooking Issues has a really interesting technique that he calls this. It's called massaging the sack. So what I'm going to do is just not push too hard, because you don't want to push the gelatin or any of the separated material through the napkin. But essentially you're just going to do kind of a low pressure on it. Here's a closer look on the product that we're getting out of the clarification process, and you can see how clear it actually is. So now that we've done the clarification, I've actually done this experiment 3 different times here, and I'm just going to go down the line and explain kind of what I learned, some of the mistakes I made, and the final product that we came out with. So this one here is actually just regular lime juice that we're used to working with behind a bar. You can see it's not very clear, it has some pulp in there, but this is what we traditionally use on a daily basis. This one here is my first attempt at clarification, and it turned out really well. One of the things I think I did incorrectly, though, is I think I squeezed the agar solution a little too hard in the final step. I was a little too excited about it, and I actually think that I pushed a little bit of the color through the agar solution and back into the lime juice. So it's not quite the clarity that I was hoping for, but it's still much better than the lime juice that is just natural fresh pressed lime juice. Now this one here is my second attempt at clarification. I tried to get the color to an even better level, and I definitely achieved that. But one of the things that happened during this clarification process is during the point where the agar starts to set like a gelatin, I continuously whipped it, or broke it apart with a whisk, and it didn't have enough time to set, in my opinion. So what happened is that when I went to go and push the agar solution through the cloth, the agar actually went through the cloth because it was still kind of in liquid form and it wasn't fully set. And then it actually began to set in the glass here. So don't be hasty. You know, let the agar solution have enough time to set, and you won't have this problem. So the last one here was, the reason it's so low is actually because I only had a little bit of product left, about half the volume as I did in the beginning of most of the other ones here. But it definitely achieved the best overall result for me. And I did kind of a combination of everything. So I kind of whisked the gelatin or the agar I was setting, and then I let it sit for an additional 15 minutes to really set well. And then I push it through the linen cloth with a really mild pressure. One of the things I'd like to do in the future is to take away as many of the variables as possible with the clarification of lime juice. So the first one that comes to mind is actually that last process when you're squeezing the lime juice through cheesecloth. You know, there's a lot of variables involved there. How much pressure to apply, how long, you know, those are, it's hard to replicate those kind of things every single time. So the first thing that comes to mind is actually putting your cheesecloth, or putting cheesecloth in a perforated hotel pan, putting your lime curds above the top of it, putting a baking sheet on top of that, and putting a predetermined amount of weight on top. So that way it takes away the variables of how much pressure to apply. Not only that, but it enables you to do something better with your time than to squeeze the lime juice through the cheesecloth. Now, one of the things that I've noticed with the clarified lime juice is that it's not as vibrant and it's not as like alive and electric as regular lime juice is. So what I mean by that is the acidity definitely falls off, and you don't get that vibrant fragrance that you get from fresh lime juice. So if you're bottle carbonating, you know, one of the benefits to that is that you're actually adding more acid into the system by the carbonation. So it'll definitely take care of the acidity problem for you. But now if you're going to make any kind of clarified margaritas or gimlets, this is a problem you're going to have to address. Now, some of the things that come to my mind on this topic is the possibility of possibly adding powdered citric acid to your mix, and even fresh lime oil to the batch. So this might help to overcome some of the problems with the fall off on acidity. But either way, I'm going to be exploring these topics in the future, and I will look forward to bringing them to everybody. But until then, I hope everybody has a great shift, and cheers. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, find us on Google+, or visit us at abarabove.com. So now that we've weighed our lime juice, and one of the next steps we're going to be doing is we're going to hydrate agar-agar in boiling water